I said, "You'll never be like my ex," and he made it his goal to ruin my life. I thought I'd won the argument when I said those words, but I didn't realize I'd just created a monster with a score to settle. I didn't know I was giving him the blueprint to destroy me. He misunderstood every word and twisted it into something brutal that made me regret the moment those words came out of my mouth. So, here's the thing. I've been dating this guy named Julius for 2 years. He's good. But sometimes when something feels too good, it also feels wrong, you know? Like it doesn't belong to you, like maybe you don't deserve it. Before I met Julius, I was with someone else. Let's just call him my ex. My ex wasn't nice to me. At first he was fine, I guess. But then things changed, or maybe I just didn't see it at the start. He would yell at me all the time, and I mean all the time. It didn't matter what I did. If I said the wrong thing or even asked him a simple question, he'd get mad. And when I told him it hurt my feelings, he would just roll his eyes like I was being too sensitive. I don't even know why I stayed with him for as long as I did. Maybe it was because I thought I could fix things. Or maybe I thought that's just how relationships were. I'd never been in a good one, so what did I know? I thought yelling and ignoring and feeling small was normal. I got used to it. He never helped around the house either. Not once. I was always the one doing the dishes or cooking dinner or picking up after him. And if I ever asked for help, he'd act like I was nagging him. So eventually, I stopped asking. It didn't matter anyway because he wouldn't listen. And when I was upset or stressed out or just needed someone to talk to, he wasn't there for me. He would sit on his phone or watch TV and nod like he was listening, but I knew he wasn't. He didn't care. It made me feel like I wasn't important, like my problems didn't matter. So yeah, that relationship was bad, really bad. And when I finally left him, I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone treat me like that again. I told myself I deserved better, even though I didn't really believe it. Then I met Julius. He was nothing like my ex. Julius was sweet and kind and patient. He listened when I talked, like really listened. He would sit there and look at me with these big, warm eyes, like every word I said was the most important thing he'd ever heard. At first, I didn't know how to handle it. It was weird. I wasn't used to someone treating me that way. When he helped me with little things, like carrying groceries or washing dishes, I didn't know what to say. I kept waiting for him to get annoyed or tell me to do it myself, but he never did. He just smiled and said he didn't mind. Julius was always so thoughtful, too. He remembered the little things like how I liked my coffee or what my favorite movie was. He would plan cute dates and surprise me with my favorite snacks. He would hold my hand when we walked and tell me I was beautiful, even when I didn't feel like it. It was perfect, like a dream, but it also felt off, not because of anything Julius did. It was me. I wasn't used to it. I didn't know how to accept it. The more he treated me well, the more I felt like I didn't deserve it. I kept thinking about my ex and all the times he told me I was too much or not enough. I started to believe him. I started to think Julius was just being nice because he felt sorry for me, or because he didn't really know me yet. I know that sounds stupid, but it's how I felt. And instead of talking to Julius about it, I started pulling away. I would get annoyed over little things, like if he texted me too much or asked me how my day was. I would snap at him for no reason, and then I'd feel guilty about it later. But instead of apologizing, I'd just pretend it didn't happen. Sometimes I would pick fights just to see if he would get mad. I wanted to prove to myself that he wasn't as perfect as he seemed. I wanted him to yell at me or ignore me so I could feel normal again. But he never did. He stayed calm and tried to talk things out, which only made me feel worse. It was like I was trying to ruin the relationship on purpose, like I was testing him to see how far I could push him before he gave up on me. But he never gave up. He kept being kind and patient, even when I didn't deserve it. And the more he did that, the more I hated myself. Because deep down, I knew I was the one messing things up. I was the bad guy in my own story, and I didn't know how to stop. I started comparing him to my ex in my head all the time, even though they were nothing alike. I would think about all the times my ex made me feel small, and wonder why Julius didn't do the same. It was like I couldn't trust him to be good to me because I didn't think I was worth it. One day, Julius planned this amazing date. He took me to my favorite restaurant and then to a little park with fairy lights. It was perfect, but all I could think about was how much effort he was putting in and how I didn't deserve it. I couldn't even enjoy it because I was too busy feeling guilty. That night, when we got home, I picked another fight. I don't even remember what it was about, something stupid probably, but instead of arguing back, Julius just looked at me with this sad, tired expression and said he loved me. And I froze, because I realized how much I'd been hurting him. I'd been so focused on my own feelings that I didn't think about how my actions were affecting him. He didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve me. The truth is, even though Julius is amazing, I still found myself missing things about my ex sometimes. And that feels so messed up to say because my ex was awful to me. He made me feel small and ignored me when I needed him, and he yelled at me like I was a child. But there were parts of him that stuck in my head, like pieces of a bad song you can't stop humming. Julius was kind and thoughtful, but sometimes I felt like he was too nice. That probably sounds ridiculous. How can someone be too nice? I was just a terrible person. Julius always asked for my opinion about everything. He asked to know what I wanted to eat, what I wanted to watch, where I wanted to go. He always tried to make me happy, but it felt like he didn't know what I wanted unless I told him. And I knew that was not fair because he was only trying to include me, but I couldn't help it. My ex wasn't like that. He never asked me what I wanted, he just decided, and that was that. Back then I hated it. I hated feeling like I didn't have a choice, but I began looking back and wondering if maybe it was easier that way. I didn't have to think or choose or worry about making the wrong decision. He decided for me, and I just went along with it. With Julius, it was different. He wanted to hear what I think, and he actually listened. But sometimes it felt too much, like he was putting all the pressure on me to decide, and I didn't always know what I wanted. I knew he was just trying to be a gentleman, but in my head, I twisted it into something bad. I told myself that he was indecisive or unsure of himself, even though that was not true. My ex wasn't kind or patient or caring like Julius was, but my ex was confident. At least that's how it seemed. He never hesitated or second-guessed himself. He just did what he wanted, and I followed. But Julius barely did that. He asked me what I thought and waited for my answer, and instead of appreciating that, I felt annoyed. I felt like he should already know what I want without me having to say it. But how could he? He's not a mind reader. I knew it was not fair to compare them. Julius and my ex were nothing alike. My ex was selfish and mean, and Julius was the opposite. But my brain didn't care about fairness. It just remembered the parts of my ex that were easier and ignored all the bad stuff. Like, my ex had this way of making decisions so quickly. He didn't hesitate or ask for advice. He just did it. And sometimes I missed that, even though I knew it came from a place of selfishness. With Julius, it was like he cared too much about what I thought, and I made that into a bad thing. I hated that I felt that way because Julius was so good to me. He treated me with respect and kindness, and he never made me feel small. But instead of focusing on that, I got stuck in my own head, comparing him to someone who didn't deserve me in the first place. And it's not just the decisiveness thing. There were other little things too. Like how my ex was confident to the point of arrogance. Back then, it drove me crazy, because he always thought he was right, and he never listened to me. But I found myself missing that toxic confidence. Julius wasn't arrogant. He was humble and kind, and he always made me feel heard. But sometimes I missed the way my ex would take charge, even if it was for all the wrong reasons. And that made me feel like a terrible person because Julius was everything I said I wanted in a partner. I felt like I was trapped in my own head, replaying all the bad parts of my ex, but remembering them as good. It was like my brain was trying to rewrite history to make me doubt what I had with Julius. And the worst part is, I knew Julius could sense that something was off. He didn't say it, but I could see it in the way he looked at me when I got quiet for too long or when I seemed distracted. I knew I should have told him how I was feeling, but I couldn't. How do you tell someone who loves you that you're missing parts of a person who hurt you? How do you explain that you're comparing them to someone who made you feel worthless, even though they've done nothing wrong? I didn't want to hurt Julius because he didn't deserve that. But I also couldn't stop these thoughts from creeping in. It was like they were stuck in my head, no matter how hard I tried to push them away. Sometimes, when I was alone, I would think about what it would be like if I was still with my ex. Just saying that feels awful, but it's true. I thought about how different things would be, and for a moment, I missed it. Not the yelling or the ignoring, but the parts that felt familiar, the parts that felt easy, even if they weren't good for me. And then I feel guilty because Julius was everything I should want. He was patient and kind and thoughtful, and he loved me in a way I've never been loved before. But instead of being grateful, I was stuck in the past, missing someone who never deserved me. I didn't know why I felt this way. Maybe it was because I was scared. Scared that I didn't deserve someone like Julius. Scared that I'd never be able to let go of my past and fully appreciate what I have now. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop comparing them in my head. I couldn't stop wishing that Julius had some of the traits my ex had, even though those traits came with so much pain. It's like my brain was playing a cruel trick on me, making me long for something I knew was bad for me. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was sabotaging my own happiness. One day, Julius bought me a bag. It wasn't my birthday or anything. He just saw it and thought I'd like it. He told me he'd been saving up for it because he wanted to get me something nice, something I could use every day. And when he handed it to me, he had this big, excited smile, like he couldn't wait to see my reaction. But the thing is, I didn't like the bag. I know that sounds so shallow, but it's true. It wasn't my style, and I knew I'd never use it. And instead of smiling and saying thank you, I told him right away that I didn't like it. I didn't even try to sugarcoat it. I just blurted it out like it was no big deal. The look on his face broke my heart for a second. I could see how much it hurt him to hear that. He tried to hide it, but I know Julius. I know how much he cares about making me happy, and I knew right then that I'd crushed him. He asked me if I wanted him to return it. I said yes, even though I could see the sadness in his eyes. And the worst part, he didn't argue. He didn't tell me to keep it or try to convince me to give it a chance. He just said he would return it, and he meant it. I should have felt bad for how I handled it. I should have apologized and told him it was fine, but instead, I got angry. Not at him, but at myself. Except I didn't know how to deal with that, so I took it out on him. I don't even know why I was angry. Maybe it was because he didn't push back. He didn't fight for the gift or try to make me keep it. He just accepted my feelings and tried to fix the situation, and for some reason that made me mad. I guess I wanted some kind of toxic reaction from him. I wanted him to argue with me or tell me I was being ungrateful. I wanted him to show me that he cared enough to fight back, even if it was messy and wrong. But Julius didn't do that. He just stayed calm and kind, and it drove me crazy. It felt like he was too perfect, too patient, and instead of appreciating that, I twisted it into something bad. I told myself he didn't care enough to fight for me, even though deep down I knew that wasn't true. So I threw a fit, a massive one. I started yelling and crying and saying things I didn't mean. I told him he didn't understand me and that he never listened, which was a lie because he always listens. I accused him of not knowing what I like, even though he tries harder than anyone I've ever known. And the whole time, Julius just stood there, looking confused and hurt. He didn't understand where all of this was coming from, and honestly, neither did I. It was like I couldn't stop myself. The more I talked, the worse I felt, but I couldn't shut up. I kept pushing and pushing, hoping he'd snap, hoping he'd yell back or walk away. But he didn't. He just stayed there, calm and quiet, waiting for me to finish. And when I finally did, he asked me if I was okay. He asked me if there was something else bothering me because he didn't believe it was just about the bag. That question hit me like a punch to the gut because he was right. It wasn't about the bag. It wasn't about him or anything he'd done. It was about me. It was about all the stuff I hadn't dealt with, all the anger and sadness and confusion I'd been carrying around for years. But instead of telling him that, I just got defensive. I told him I was fine and that he didn't need to ask me that. I brushed him off like he was the one in the wrong, even though I knew I was the problem. And he didn't push. He just nodded and said okay, even though I could see how much he wanted to help. After that, I went to my room and shut the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall, replaying everything that had just happened. I felt awful. I felt like the worst person in the world, Dot. Here was this amazing guy who had done nothing but love me and try to make me happy, and I'd just torn him apart for no reason. And the worst part was, he didn't even fight back. He didn't yell or argue or tell me I was being ridiculous. He just took it. And that made me feel even worse because it reminded me of how much better he is than me. I don't know why I'm like this. I don't know why I keep trying to push him away or make him mad. Maybe it's because I'm scared he's too good for me. Or maybe it's because I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. But whatever the reason, I know it's not fair to him. He deserves better than this. He deserves someone who can appreciate all the love and kindness he gives without throwing it back in his face. The next day, Julius came home from work with this tired but warm smile on his face. He had the money in his hand, the money from returning the bag. He handed it to me and told me I could use it to get whatever I wanted. He even added a little extra to it, saying he felt bad for making me upset with his gift. I should have been grateful. I should have seen how sweet and thoughtful he was being, even after I'd thrown such a huge fit. But instead, I felt this wave of anger wash over me again. It wasn't fair, but I couldn't stop it. Why was he apologizing? Why was he trying so hard to fix something that wasn't even his fault? It felt like he was too good, too understanding, and it made me mad. I wanted him to fight back, to say something sharp, to show me that he wasn't perfect all the time. But he didn't. He just stood there, looking at me with those kind eyes that only made me feel worse. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, hotter and hotter, until it finally exploded. I told him he made me even angrier by always trying to fix everything. I told him that no matter what he did, it was never right. I yelled that he always got on my nerves, that he didn't know how to make me happy, and that he just didn't get it. And then I said the worst thing I could have said. I told him he'd never be like my ex. The moment the words left my mouth, I wanted to take them back. I wanted to swallow them whole and pretend they'd never come out. But it was too late. They were out there, hanging in the air like a dark cloud that wouldn't go away. I watched his face change, the hurt sinking in deep. He didn't yell or argue. He didn't throw my words back at me or tell me how wrong I was. He just stood there, looking at me like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. And that made me even angrier because I knew I was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I doubled down, yelling about how he wasn't confident enough, how he wasn't decisive enough, how he wasn't enough, period. The truth is, none of that was really about him. It was about me. I was the one who wasn't enough. I was the one who couldn't let go of my past or appreciate the amazing person standing right in front of me. But instead of dealing with that, I took it all out on him. I could see the pain in his eyes, but I didn't stop. I kept going, throwing words at him like knives, hoping he'd finally get angry and fight back. But he didn't. He just listened, quietly and patiently, until I ran out of things to say. When I finally stopped, the silence was deafening. It felt heavy, like the whole room was closing in on me. Julius didn't say anything. He just stood there for a moment, looking at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. And then he turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my guilt and regret. I sat down on the couch, my head in my hands, feeling like the worst person in the world. I couldn't believe what I'd just done. I couldn't believe the things I'd said to someone who had only ever shown me kindness and love. But the worst part was, I didn't even know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make things right, or how to stop this cycle of anger and hurt that I kept creating. I hated myself for what I'd done, but I hated him too, in a weird and unfair way. I hated that he was so kind and understanding, that he didn't fight back or defend himself. I hated that he made me feel so small and broken without even trying. But deep down, I knew the truth. I knew that the problem wasn't Julius. The problem was me. I was the one who couldn't let go of my past, who couldn't stop comparing him to someone who didn't deserve me. I was the one who kept pushing him away, even though he was the best thing that had ever happened to me. And now, I was the one who had to live with the consequences of my actions. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if Julius will forgive me or if I even deserve his forgiveness. All I know is that after what I said to Julius, things changed. He changed. Or maybe I broke him. I don't know. At first, I thought everything would go back to normal after some time. I thought he'd forgive me like he always did because he was Julius, and Julius was good like that. But this time was different. This time, something in him was different. He became cold, Not rude or mean, but cold. It was like all the warmth he used to have for me was gone. He stopped asking me how my day was, or if I needed help with anything. He stopped listening to me when I tried to talk about my feelings. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. He started doing his own thing, and he didn't include me anymore. He used to buy little things for me all the time, like snacks I liked or books he thought I'd enjoy. But now, he only bought things for himself. He would come home with bags of stuff, like new clothes, gadgets, things for his hobbies, food, even my favorite snacks, and he wouldn't even look at me. It felt like he didn't care about me anymore, and I hated it. But at the same time, I knew I had pushed him to this point. I had taken the sweetest, kindest person I'd ever known and turned him into someone who didn't want to try anymore. And the worst part was that he started acting like my ex. He wasn't the same as my ex, not really. Julius didn't shout or get aggressive or anything like that, but he started doing things that reminded me of my ex in all the wrong ways. He stopped asking for my opinion on things. He stopped checking in to see how I was feeling. He just did whatever he wanted, and it was like I didn't exist. It hurt so much because it was exactly what I thought I wanted. I had complained about Julius being too considerate, too patient, too kind. I had said I missed the way my ex never asked for my opinion, how he just did what he wanted. And now I had that again, but it didn't feel good. It felt awful. Every time Julius ignored me or did something without asking, it was like a slap in the face. It was like he was showing me what I'd asked for and making me live with it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix it. I tried to apologize a few times, but it didn't feel like enough. He would just nod and say okay, but his actions never changed. He didn't smile at me the way he used to. He didn't laugh at my jokes. He didn't even look at me the same way anymore. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. I had ruined everything. I had taken this sweet, loving relationship and turned it sour. I had taken a man who loved me so much and made him stop trying. And now, I was stuck with the consequences of my own actions. I kept thinking about the old Julius, the one who used to light up when he saw me, the one who would do anything to make me happy, and it hurt so much to know that I had destroyed that version of him. I missed him. I missed the way things used to be. I missed feeling like I was cared for and loved, but I knew I didn't deserve any of that anymore. Every time I looked at Julius, I saw what I had done. I saw how my words and actions had chipped away at him until there was nothing left but this cold, distant version of him, and I hated myself for it. I kept asking myself why I couldn't just appreciate him when I had the chance. Why did I have to compare him to my ex? Why did I have to push him away when all he wanted was to love me? But it was too late for questions. It was too late for anything. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if there's even a way to fix this. All I know is that I regret everything. I regret every harsh word, every selfish action, every moment I took him for granted. I had something good, something so rare and beautiful, and I destroyed it. Update. Hi again. It's been 2 months since I last wrote, and I wish I could say things have gotten better, but they haven't. If anything, they've gotten worse. I don't even know who I am anymore, and I barely recognize Julius either. It's like we're living in 2 separate worlds now, and the wall between us is something I built with my own hands. The change in Julius didn't happen all at once. It was little things at first, like him not asking me how my day was, or forgetting to say goodnight before bed. But over time, it became something bigger, something I couldn't ignore. He stopped caring, or at least it felt like he did. He didn't laugh with me anymore. He didn't smile when he saw me. He didn't even look at me like he used to. It was like all the love he had for me had dried up, and I couldn't even blame him because I had drained it out of him drop by drop with my words and actions. The worst part is that he's starting to act more like my ex every day. He doesn't listen to me or ask me for my opinion anymore. He doesn't try to make me happy. He just does whatever he wants, and it's like I'm not even there. I hate it. I hate the way he treats me now, but I hate myself more because I know I caused this. I know I turned him into this version of himself that I don't even like, and now I'm stuck living with the monster I created. Yesterday was the breaking point for me. I was in the kitchen trying to reach something from the high cupboard. I'm short, so it's always a struggle, and normally Julius would just walk in and help without me even asking. But not this time. I was standing on my tiptoes, stretching as far as I could, and I heard him walk into the room. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. I thought maybe just maybe, he'd help me like he used to. But he didn't.
No.
He looked at me struggling, and then he just walked out. He didn't say anything. He didn't offer to help. He just left me there like I wasn't even worth his time. I don't know what came over me, but I couldn't take it anymore. I marched after him, my heart pounding in my chest, and I started shouting. I yelled at him for ignoring me when I needed help. I told him it wasn't fair, that he was being mean and cold, and that I didn't deserve to be treated like this. And do you know what he said to me? He told me I liked that kind of thing. I felt like I'd been slapped. His words hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard, and for a moment I couldn't even breathe. He said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And the worst part is, he wasn't wrong. I had told him before that I liked it when my ex was decisive, that I missed the way he never asked for my opinion. I had thrown Julius's kindness and patience back in his face, over and over again, until he finally stopped trying. And now, here I was, standing in front of him, furious because he wasn't helping me. Furious because he wasn't acting like the sweet, thoughtful person I fell in love with. I had turned Julius into this version of himself that I couldn't stand, and now I was losing my mind. I don't even know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm trapped in this mess that I created, and there's no way out. I miss the old Julius so much, but I know I'm the reason he's gone. I know I broke him, and now I'm left with this cold, distant man who doesn't care about me anymore. A man who treats me like I'm invisible, who walks away when I need him, and I have no one to blame but myself. I wish I could go back and undo everything. I wish I could take back every hurtful word, every selfish action, every time I pushed him away. But it's too late for that now. I've created a monster with my behavior, and now I have to live with it. Update 2. Hello, everyone. I'm here again, and I don't even know why I'm writing this, because it feels like nothing is getting better. If anything, it's worse. I'm so fed up, so frustrated, and honestly, I don't know what to do anymore. Julius is still cold to me. He barely speaks to me unless he has to, and when he does, it's short and dry, like he can't wait to stop talking to me. I feel like I'm invisible in my own relationship, and it's all my fault. I can't stop thinking about how things used to be. I can't stop replaying every sweet moment in my head, every time Julius went out of his way to make me happy, every time he smiled at me like I was the most important person in his world. And now, that's all gone. I don't know how to reach him anymore. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Every time I try to talk to him, it feels like I'm talking to a stranger. He doesn't even look at me the same way he used to. His eyes used to be so warm and full of love, but now they're cold and distant, like he's already given up on me. I hate this. I hate the person I've become, and I hate what I've turned him into. The regret is eating me alive. I regret everything I've ever said to him, every time I hurt him, every moment I took him for granted. If I could rewind the clock and go back to the beginning, I would do everything differently. I would be a better girlfriend. I would appreciate him more. I would never say the awful things I said to him. But I can't go back. I can't undo the damage I've done. Yesterday, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand the way he was treating me, even though I knew I deserved it. I was so angry and frustrated, and all that anger just boiled over. I went up to him and told him how I felt. I told him that I couldn't handle how cold and distant he'd become, that it wasn't fair for him to keep treating me like this. I told him that if he kept acting like this, I'd break up with him. And do you know what he said? He didn't argue. He didn't try to stop me. He just looked at me, calm and unbothered, and told me that I knew where the door was if I ever got tired. I couldn't believe it. I just stood there staring at him, trying to process what he'd said. He didn't care if I left. He didn't care if I stayed. He didn't care about me anymore. It hurt so much because I knew I had done this to us. I had done this to him. The old Julius would have fought for me. He would have tried to fix things, even if I was the one in the wrong. But this new Julius doesn't care anymore. He doesn't have the energy to care, and I know it's because I drained it all out of him. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I feel like I'm trapped in this endless cycle of regret and frustration, and I don't know how to get out of it. I miss him so much. I miss the way he used to love me, the way he used to make me feel like I was the center of his world. And now, I feel like I'm nothing to him. I wish I could go back. I wish I could rewind the clock and start over, so I could be the girlfriend he deserved from the start. I wish I could undo all the hurt I caused and show him how much he means to me. But it's too late for wishes. Now I'm stuck with the version of Julius that I created, the version that doesn't care about me, that doesn't love me the way he used to, and I hate myself for it. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix this or if I'll just have to live with the consequences of my actions. All I know is that I regret everything, and I wish I could take it all back. And the funny thing is, while I was busy worrying about being a better person, he traveled to his parents' house and sent me the most heartbreaking text. He broke up with me over a text. The lack of civility is just heartbreaking. It wasn't enough for him to punish me. He broke up with me in the most embarrassing way. Now I am alone and in regret.